Hey, it's Mariana, and thank you for joining me on the Commitment to Growth podcast, a platform dedicated to helping you build resilience for lifelong momentum. We chat about healing, mindset development, and how to live in your authentic truth, because often it's not our problems that cause our dissatisfaction, but everything around them that we haven't yet addressed. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get into this week's conversation. Welcome to the Commitment to Growth podcast, everyone. If you're new, welcome. And if you're not new, welcome back. My name is Mariana. I am your host, and I am a resilience coach for women and founder of Commitment to Growth Resilience Coaching. And one way that I am extending the conversation of how to build a truly resilient life is through facilitating resilient conversations here on the podcast. And today's is no different. I am so excited to introduce you to the guests that we have on for this week. But before I do that, I just want to say happy Pride to my folks in the queer community. It is June 2nd as I am recording this, so we are in full swing into Pride Month and everything that Pride Month stands for. So if you're listening and you are not a part of the queer community, I highly encourage you to spend this month educating yourself and listening to the conversations that are being facilitated around what this month means and what this month needs from us, and every month, of course, but this month especially, to step up and listen and amplify voices. So it's a big month of learning. It's a big month of celebration. It's a big month of recognizing what the human beings that are part of this community, what struggles they face, what barriers to oppression they face that keep them from not being able to express themselves authentically. And we're going to be facilitating conversations around that this month, because I do want to dedicate a lot of the conversations this month to that. And because of that, I have decided to make June's theme on the podcast authenticity and authentic expression. So in case you haven't been here before, I recently decided that I wanted to start theming out the conversations that I facilitated on the podcast every month. So April was healing the inner people pleaser. We just wrapped up May with how to allow more love into your life. And now we are entering authenticity and authentic expression here in June, because I just think that it fits the theme of Pride so beautifully and really complements what Pride really stands for. So we are going to be diving into a conversation that is all about having the courage to stand in our authentic essence. And the person that I have chosen to help me facilitate this first conversation on the podcast this month is none other than Sheena Yap Chan. Let me tell you a little about Sheena. She is the Wall Street Journal Bestselling author of the book, The Tao of Self-Confidence. She is a keynote speaker, consultant, and award-winning podcaster on leadership and self-confidence. She grew up in Toronto in the 1990s, where she struggled to embrace her culture amidst a sea of Western beauty standards. And in her 20s, she began to reclaim her identity, shedding her blonde hair back to her natural color. Frustrated by the lack of resources catering to Asian women's confidence, she took matters into her own hands by launching her own podcast called The Tao of Self-Confidence, where she interviews Asian women about their inner journey to self-confidence. Through over 700 interviews with Asian women from diverse backgrounds, she discovered she wasn't alone in her struggles and found solace and strength in their shared experiences. Her podcast not only provides a support system, but also amplifies the representation of Asian women. In this conversation, we explore the topics of self-confidence, authenticity, and the challenges faced by women in entrepreneurship. Sheena shares her journey of self-confidence and emphasizes the importance of loving oneself, including the good, the bad, and the ugly parts. And we discuss the societal pressures that drive women to be superwomen, and the need to dismantle stereotypes, work smart, not hard, and the role of trauma in building confidence. This conversation is packed with so much empowerment and so much good information for you. Even if you are not a self-identifying woman as you're listening to this, I still think that there is so much that we can all take away from Sheena's explanation of how she punched through glass ceilings and how she's continuing to do so and uplifting others to do the same. So make sure you're present, make sure you're ready to get empowered, and that you're ready to walk away from this conversation feeling absolutely grounded in your confidence and your capabilities. Without further ado, here is Sheena Yap Chan. Sheena, welcome to the Commitment to Growth podcast. How's your day going?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor to be a guest on your show today.
Of course. You're another of the guests that I've had on since the podcast movement conference, and I just think it's always so wonderful that those events bring like-minded people together, and I'm very excited to get to sit down with you today and facilitate this conversation. So why don't you tell us and the audience who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do?
Yeah, so my name is Sheena Yap Chan. I am a author, podcaster, consultant, speaker, keynote speaker on the topic of confidence and leadership, especially for women, just because, we still face a huge gap from men, right? There's so many things we still go through, even till this day, just just the biases we still go through. So it's really important to empower women, to show them what's possible, because without it, we're just going to be in the same cycle over and over again. So I've done workshops for corporations, I've spoken on stages, being able to be interviewed on amazing podcasts like this. And I love podcast movement. It's one of those events where you definitely need to go and check out and connect with other podcasters, because it's always a good vibe, good environment, good people. And one thing I love about podcasting is you get to be yourself. You get to express as your true self. And I think that's really important in this day and age, when Instagram and filters and all those things that pop up, really messes with our mental health. So yeah, I recently launched a book called The Tao of Self-Confidence, a guide to moving beyond trauma and awakening the leader within. That became a Wall Street Journal bestselling book. And I'm currently writing a second book with the same publisher. And trauma is really important, right? People are like, what does trauma and business have to do with it? It has to do everything with it, right? If there is something that is holding you back, you're not going to be able to show up as your best self. And in entrepreneurship, being a leader goes hand in hand. It takes a lot of confidence and courage, going, especially as women, right? I feel like as women, we tend to overthink everything. We want everything to be perfect. Of course, we get, ridiculed by society way more than men. And so it's up to us to dismantle those stereotypes, keep moving forward, show up, take space, and speak up, because if not, then we're just going to be in the same cycle all over again. So that's a little bit about me. And I currently live in Toronto, Canada.
I love that you brought up that point, because I actually just recently spoke on this in an Instagram post. I don't know if you saw the video that went viral of the NFL player Harrison Butler that made that speech at that commencement ceremony in the States. And I made a video on Instagram by like this lady that made it, and she was kind of clapping back at it and saying, like, she just gave videos of everything that she's done. Like she was a vet tech, and she's become a speaker and has her own clinic now and all this stuff. And essentially the video was in clapback and saying, no, we haven't been fed diabolical lies. Like, we can do everything and more. And in the caption of my video take that I did on that, I said, women who elicit confidence and women who go out and do the not traditionally female thing aren't often seen as confident. Like, we're often called arrogant and cocky and self-absorbed, instead of being praised for our assertion in the face of that patriarchy and that oppression. So to you, what is the Tao of self-confidence?
Yeah, that is a great question. And I haven't seen the video yet, but I have seen a lot of reaction videos about it. And I know the main point, which was really telling women to stay home and be housewives. And it's so funny because his mother actually had a really great career. So the fact that he said that is really mind-boggling, right? I think she was like a physicist or something. I just know she had a really good job, right? As and so to hear that is really disappointing, right? Women did not spend $80,000 a year for 4 years just to be told to stay at home. Not that there's anything wrong. I think, if you want to stay home and take care of the household, that's great. Everyone does their own thing. And that is the point of, the Tao of self-confidence. The Tao means the way. And so the way to self-confidence means different for everybody. What may work for me might not work for you. And that makes total sense because we're two different people. When I first started this journey of self-confidence, I thought I had to show up a certain way. I thought I had to be loud and boisterous and be out there. And I thought that's what being confident meant, not realizing you can be an introvert and be confident. You can still be shy and be confident. I mean, confidence is really about knowing your capabilities and going after it, right? I mean, it's not always easy, of course, especially as women, especially when we have men telling us that we should stay home and be housewives. Not like, again, not that there's anything wrong with that, but there's women out there who want to do different things, who want to start a business, who want to, work at one of their dream places, who want to travel the world. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? And as women, we should be able to do that. I mean, there's so many like these male gurus who like go out there and tell us what to do. And it's like, why don't we trade places? And then you can tell me if what you're saying makes sense. Like,
Exactly.
there's one that constantly says, if you want a successful business, you have to hustle 24/7. And if not, you're a failure. And it's like, that is really unfair because as women, whether we have children or not, we're natural born caretakers, right? We end up doing everything, whether it's taking care of our family members, taking care of the household, taking care of kids, doing chores, running errands. Women do all that, right? So it's unfair to tell women that you need to hustle 24/7 when you'd be lucky if we get 1 hour working on our business. And that
Oh
should
my
be,
gosh.
you know, that should be celebrated, right? Especially like, you wear so many hats. You're not just a businesswoman. You're a mother, you're a daughter, you're a sister, you're a friend, you're, basically a caretaker. There's just a cook, like you do everything, right? And it's like, it's insane that we still go through this, right? And back then, I thought I was a failure because I didn't hustle, but I realized, wait a second, we're all different. And it's unfair for him to say that because he has a wife who takes care of the household. So he can have the luxury to hustle in his business 24/7 versus a woman, like I mentioned, you'd be lucky if we get 1 hour, right? And so if
Yeah.
1 hours we have, 1 hours we have, and give ourselves some grace and just keep moving forward, right? This is not a race. Everyone has their own journey. We can't compare ourselves to others because we're all different. So yeah, self-confidence, the Tao meaning is just what that way looks like for you, right? The methods I may choose for confidence might not work for you and vice versa. And I think it's important to point that out, that we're all different. There's like 8 billion people in this world. There's no way we're going to build self-confidence the same way.
I'm also very glad that you brought that up because I think that's something that I learned a little too late into my own business journey as a sole entrepreneur. Like, it's so easy to get really ambitious and want to do everything at once and always have your head ducked in whatever you're doing and always be learning and advancing without actually taking the time to understand what it actually takes to run a business, what it actually takes to run a business on your own. And especially as someone who is like social and values her slow mornings and wants to take that time for herself, I have felt so much guilt in those times where I'm like, I don't want to be grinding right now. I don't want to be going 100% all the time. Like, I do, but it's not feasible. And I think a lot of women feel so much shame around that because the dynamics and the way that we're actually able to put out is very different than perhaps what's considered the masculine approach, right? I get a lot of women in my practice who are at that burnout point and they're like, I don't think I know myself anymore. I forgot my identity all because I gave all into this one identity of being either a business owner or a mother or an employee or whatever that looks like for them. What was your journey into that Tao of self-confidence, that authenticity like for you? What was your catalyst?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I never did was, love myself and give that unconditional love, meaning loving the good, bad, and the ugly parts of you. I always, loved the good parts and would denounce the bad and ugly part, not realizing it's all part of the process, right? If you can't love yourself for who you are, how do you expect others to accept you for your flaws and the mistakes that you make? Because we're not perfect. Nobody's perfect. And as women, we feel like we always have to be perfect, and it's exhausting. Society has ingrained that women have to be the superwoman of everything, but that's really unattainable. Like, we can't. It's just too much. It's a lot, right? And so I
Yeah.
realized that I was like you. I was like you too. I would feel bad if I didn't work on my business, or I woke up late, or I was a little bit slower than normal, and I was like, oh, everybody else is hustling, but I'm not. But really, of course, there's times in our life where we have to work a little bit harder, but it's also learning to work smart, right? It's not always about working hard, because in my culture, we've been taught to work hard all our life, but nobody told us to work smart to, get to the top, to, go for those management positions at corporations, or even just be a speaker, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's sometimes it's the wrong way of doing things, right? Like we work hard all our life and then you don't see the fruits of your labor, and then you get mad at yourself because you work so hard. So, working hard
Mm-hmm.
is part of it, but also learning to work smart, right? Networking, connecting with others, putting yourself out there, asking for help, hiring people who do it better than you, because men do that. Why can't women, right? We get
Mm-hmm.
shamed for every single thing that we do. Meanwhile, men do it all the time. So, I mean, we have to create a new normal, especially for women, because I mean, if we keep on doing the same thing over and over again, I mean, it's going to take more than 130 years to achieve gender parity, which they mention.
Yeah.
I know as women, we go through so much. I mean, if you look at, what's happening in the news, like, women are still treated as objects, whether it's in Hollywood or in different parts of the world, we still go through it. And it's like, how do we stop this, right? How do we move
Mm-hmm.
forward? I know sometimes we take one step forward and two steps back, and it seems like we're not making progress, but we are, because people aren't used to us speaking up, aren't used to us making moves. So yes, it's going to take a little bit more time, but we have to do it, right, for our current and future generations that want
Mm-hmm.
us to see succeed, so that they know what's possible for themselves.
100%. What was the moment for you where you realized I have to love myself better? Or what was that first step in that direction for you?
I mean, I've worked with healers to kind of just see things from a different perspective. Like my friend is an energy healer, so she made me realize, like, loving yourself isn't just the good parts. You have to love every single part of yourself. And it was a
Mm-hmm.
big like relief, right? It's like, I wake up, it's like, oh my God, I have a pimple. I look terrible. Oh my God, my muffin top is hanging out of my pants. This is horrible. But
Mm-hmm.
that's like normal life for most people, right? We can't edit our bodies in real life, not like what you see on Instagram. And that really messes with people's head. Body dysmorphia is prevalent, even like Zoom dysmorphia. During the pandemic, a lot of people went and got surgery done because they thought they looked bad on Zoom. Like it's such
Wow.
it's wild to, talk about these things, but it really does happen. And so this is why it's
Mm-hmm.
important to show up as our authentic self, the good, bad, and the ugly, especially when you're in entrepreneurship. Sometimes people paint this picture like life is so easy. It's actually a lot harder. Like working a job is easy, you know? Entrepreneurship is not easy. It's a lot of challenges, a lot of rejection, but it's
Yeah.
also worth it, right? Yes, you get to pick your own schedule, but people don't realize there's times where you just work 24 hours in a day. There's
Yeah.
sometimes there's not a consistent income stream that comes by, right? You have to
Mm-hmm.
build stuff. You have to, you have to go out there and learn how to sell. And as women, like, that's a necessary skill we all should have, right? How are you going to put food
Mm-hmm.
on the table if you're too afraid to put yourself out there? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it was through another friend, just to really help me see things from a different perspective. And I'm always willing to try something different as long as it doesn't hurt anybody.
Mm-hmm.
I'm willing to do that. And so I was glad I was able to do that and see that it is important to love yourself, but the good, bad, and the ugly.
Mm. I think that's the one step that we miss so much, right? Like I know I had my brutal awakening with that so many times where you're so happy with yourself when you're putting out and you're grinding and you're accomplishing things and the numbers are going up, whether it's in your followers or in your newsletter subscribers or in the weights in the gym, right? And then something doesn't click one day and you're like, oh my gosh, like everything just goes to shambles, right? But there's so much healing and so much growth to be done in those kind of darker moments, right? Where you can find grace in accepting the ebbs and flows of life. You can find grace in not being a high achiever all the time. And I think that's the more uncomfortable space that a lot of people don't know how to kind of navigate, because seeing your shadow or seeing those parts of yourself that maybe aren't where you'd like them to be yet, or can't be as consistent as you'd like them to be, right, is uncomfortable. So how have you kind of navigated those low moments to still pour love into yourself?
I mean, practicing self-care, self-love is important. Taking time for yourself is really important. Finding ways to
Mm-hmm.
build confidence that works for you, I think is really important. Like I used to think, I try to meditate and it would just be a hot mess because I would end up falling asleep and I thought something was wrong with me because I just couldn't meditate properly. But I
Mm-hmm.
realized it's just not for me, right? Like, now that the weather is better in Toronto, I love to jog outside and that's a time where I can just decompress, mind dump everything, just
Mm-hmm.
clear my head, when I'm having like mental health, you know, just my mental health is like not good, then I go outside and it just makes me feel better, especially when I'm around like bodies of water. It just calms me down.
Mm-hmm.
And also leaning towards other people, having a community. We don't have to be alone in this journey. And asking for help is probably one of the best things I would give advice to people who are working on their self-confidence journey, because I mean, I come from a culture where I'm told asking for help is a sign of weakness or a handout, but it really
Mm-hmm.
isn't. If we want things to change, we have to do things together. We can't do everything ourselves. And it gets lonely when, times are tough, when we're not always 100% confident. So it's why it's important to have a community that you can lean on, who can cheer you, bring you up when times are tough. They're there to support you no matter what happens, the good, bad, and the ugly. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the things that really help me, especially asking for help. I mean, I still get very uncomfortable when people are like, what can I help you with? Because I wasn't taught that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes that gives me anxiety, and I realize, I need to just tell them what I need help with, right? Because they asked,
Mm-hmm.
and so I'm just going to tell them.
Totally. And I think there's also something to be said about um kind of being comfortable with asking for help before it gets to its worst point, right? Like I know that's something I've caught in myself recently is, oh, like I wait until it's really bad, and then when it's really bad, you're less likely to share because there's much less that you can process about what's going on. There's much less that you can wrap your head around. You might be carrying more shame about whatever you're experiencing because it feels like it's just dragged out for so long. So it's really about having somebody who you can regularly check in with, right? Whether it's a friend, a parent, a partner, and just being comfortable kind of talking about every emotion that you're experiencing regularly instead of, again, like when you're good or when you're bad, right? I want to shift into a little bit about your experience a as a woman, from like an Asian woman in a white patriarchal society, which we have here in Canada, climbing that ladder into using your voice and coming out with your own body of work around confidence. Very difficult task. I can relate to that as a one from the Latinx community, right? It's a different kind of hustle, and it's a different kind of mindset that you're always like, well, I'm always gonna have to work a little bit harder, right? So what was that journey for you to rising and using your voice and kind of bridging your intersectional identities to make that happen?
I think for me, it was really just my upbringing. Migrating to Canada from the Philippines was a big culture shock. And even though Toronto is one of the most multicultural cities in the world, growing up here, I never saw anybody in the media that looked like me. So I was actually ashamed of who I was culturally. And it wasn't until my
Mm-hmm.
20s when I decided to dye my hair from blonde to my original hair color, where I just really embraced
Mm-hmm.
being Asian. And so for me, creating
Mm-hmm.
representation was really important. And that's why I started the podcast, right? I really wanted to highlight these amazing Asian women who have been through hell and back, who've had the confidence to pave their own way, to be trailblazers. And that's really inspiring, right? It's helped me too, because for so long, I thought I was the only one dealing with issues, not feeling good enough, feeling like I have to please everybody except for myself, always second guessing myself, always overthinking, always too scared, always resisting. But a lot
Mm-hmm.
of us go through that. And so I realize we're not alone. We all go through this. Nothing's wrong with us. It's part of the process. It's part of life. And when we realize we're not alone, like it just makes things a lot better, right? We realize, even though she went through that, she was able to overcome it and be who she is today. And so it just shows what's possible for ourselves. And that's why, for me, representation is really important, especially dismantling the negative stereotypes. I mean, it's always not easy for women. If you don't speak up, you're weak. If you speak up, you're complaining. Like, we just can't win, right? I remember talking about these same exact issues on like an Instagram reel, and the amount of hate comments was insane. Like,
Wow.
everyone telling me I need to shut up. Who am I to say that? You're so privileged. And it wasn't like I was complaining. It was just talking about the things that we go through, which is something that I talk about all the time. So it's not like it was the first time I ever spoke about it. And it was just like a 30-second clip from like a 30-minute interview. So it was just a part of it. But it was wild to hear it. Like, I had PTSD every time a comment notification came out on Instagram, right? And
totally.
what I went through is like nothing compared to what other women have been through, right? Like, getting, anti-Asian racist attacks, sexual abuse, physical abuse, domestic abuse. I mean, mine is not as bad as theirs, but it could still, it can still affect us, right? Mentally thinking, is what I'm doing right? Is what I'm doing making sense? And so, I mean, anything you do in life, we're going to have haters, whether you like it or not. There's keyboard warriors. There's people who think they know everything. And most of the people who comment are like, people with a cat as a profile photo, right? So they're very tough on the keyboards, but I'm sure they would never show their faces in real life. And so, yes, it takes a lot of courage to be out there. And also, as women, like, self-promotion is something that we should embrace and not be shamed about, right? It's always, we've been told that it's not ladylike, it's too forward, but it's like, especially if you're in business for yourself, like, how do you expect to get sales, get clients if you're not out there being your biggest advocate, being your biggest cheerleader? Like, we look at the Barbie movie last year, made over $1 billion, right? First movie to hit $1 billion mark, directed by a female. And that wouldn't have happened if it wasn't through constant promotion, being able to connect with all these companies. Like, there was even a Barbie Xbox, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, it's really important to do that. It's really important to show up, to dismantle the negative stereotypes we all go through, right? It's not just Asian women who go through it. Most women go through it, to speak up, be okay to take space. A lot of people are like, if you can't get a seat at the table, bring your own chair, or, build your own table. Like, there's always different ways to do things. And the more we can show up and show them, like, this is okay. You can call me too much or too forward, because if a man did that, he was confident and courageous. So it's just a lot of things we still go through, but it's also up to us to just keep moving forward, because eventually, the more of us show up, those names will go away, and then we, one day we'll be called confident and courageous.
I love that so much, and I just love that it's layers and layers that you're just like punching and breaking through with your fist, as hard as it is, right? Because I think it's really easy to look at the women that we look up to and say, well, she did it, why can't I? But there's no semblance in, even like, you can only get so close to someone's experience, even when they just tell it on an interview or in a book, right? Like, you don't actually know what was going on in their minds, in their hearts, as they were punching through those glass barriers and rising and rising every single time they were brought down by somebody else or by the criticism they were receiving, right? What has been your process, kind of not letting that hate get to you? Because I know it's super debilitating. Like, I've had it on particularly my TikTok videos, where people will clap back and say, you're just doing it for the clout, you're just doing it for the attention, you're just like every other wellness influencer. And I'm like, no, like, some part of you wants to jump out and say, please don't think that, but there's no sense in fighting back, right? So
yeah,
what has your experience been?
I think talking to other people about it is really important. Having that core circle where you can just kind of vent, just talk about. I think talking about it is really important. I would talk to other people and telling them how I felt. I feel down and being attacked online. I've never experienced this before, and it's really terrible, right? And
Mm-hmm.
there's women out there who will tell you, you know what? Don't worry about it. We got your back. You know, what they're saying, it's all crap. You know, do
Mm-hmm.
you. There's people out there who need to see your message, who need to see what you're doing. There's people out there who you can change for the better. And so I think having that circle is really important, having those safe spaces where you can just share what you're going through, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
most of the time we just repress everything, keep it in, and never talk about it. Because if we don't talk about it, then it never
Yeah.
happened. But it's going to keep creeping up, right?
Mm.
And what's going to happen when there's other times when it gets worse, right? Now that you have the tools and resources to heal from it, to, you know, move past it, to move forward and keep going.
Totally. And especially recognizing that there are people who see beyond the criticism and they see you for the person that you are and for the qualities that you're trying to show up in, right? That's so important. I love that so much. And one last question that I have for you here is, when you were writing the book, what was releasing it out into the world like for you, especially kind of bringing forth this new idea and not knowing how it was going to be received? What was that like, navigating that uncertainty?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I was really scared about this book coming out because I didn't know how people were going to receive it, right? Of course,
Mm-hmm.
not everyone's going to like it. There's people out there who's going to tell me it's terrible, but you know, I've had very positive feedback from everyone, you know, especially the women, female readers, the Asian female readers. They're like, finally, there's a book that speaks to me, that understands what I go through. And that is really important, right? Because if you look at the publishing industry, there's not a lot of you know, just people of color authors in general, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole publishing industry is still like 75% Caucasian, and that goes to like the top, the authors, the staff, everything. And so for
Mm-hmm.
me, it was important to talk about my culture, to talk about what we go through, to have a book that is for Asian women, because that was something I wish I had. And yeah, I was really scared. I didn't know how people are going to
Mm-hmm.
receive it. Like, you're putting
Yeah.
yourself out into the world and you just don't know what's going to happen. But it's been a really great ride, you know, just seeing where it can go and how far it's gone, and just the people who've read it and told me how it's helped them, you know, even
Mm-hmm.
just have difficult conversations, because in Asian culture, we don't do that. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
really grateful. You know, I'm currently writing my second book with the same publisher. So it's
Okay.
like the whole process all over again as I'm writing. Does this make sense? Is the content good? Will this be as good as the first book? I mean, I think we all go through that, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so I just have to realize, like, I'm doing this for a reason. Like, you know, the universe has given me this opportunity. And sometimes we're given a lot of opportunities and we're too afraid to take it. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I took it, even though I don't know what I'm doing sometimes, but I'm going
Yeah.
to figure it out as I go.
Totally. I have a friend that always reminds me that faith can be mistaken for fear. I don't know if that's the exact way that it's said, but there's something to be recognized about not letting fear dictate the truth of a situation, right? And not letting fear be the end all be all of what you end up doing for yourself, right? Because even with your second book, it's like, well, is it going to be as good as the first one? You can't even compare them because you're two different people. There was two different versions of you writing those books, right? So that's so exciting, and I'm so excited for the people listening and the people in your community to finally get their hands on it. I'm sure they're itching for it. I'm definitely itching for it. I want to get my hands on it as soon as possible. I partially lied to you. Well, I kind of lied to you when I said I had one last question for you. Actually, the tradition on the podcast is that every guest has to go through a rapid fire round of 3 questions at the
Okay,
end. The 2 are the same for everybody, and the third one is unique to the guest. So, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So, the first question is, what is your favorite quote?
Behind every successful woman is herself.
Oh my gosh. Yes,
Because it
I'm
really
snapping my
starts with
fingers.
us.
Yes, it starts with you every single time. I love that. Okay, your second question is, what song is currently stuck in your head?
Oh, I listen to a lot of K-pop, so I don't have a
Nice.
specific song right now.
Just a lot of K-pop going on
Yeah.
in your mind at all times. I love that. I love that. That's awesome. And your third and final question, unique to you here, is what does confidence mean to you right now?
I think it's knowing that you're capable, regardless of the circumstances. Even if you fall down and you can get back up and keep moving forward. So just knowing that you're capable of making it happen.
Beautiful. And where can people find you after this conversation?
Yeah, they can check out my website, SheenaYapChan.com. I have a free quiz to uncover your self-confidence personality. So it's free. It's quick to check out. If you'd like a copy of my book, The Tao of Self-Confidence, it's available on Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, Indigo, and other major book retailers. If you want to check out my podcast, which is under the same name, The Tao of Self-Confidence, it's on Apple, Spotify, Google, all the major podcasting platforms. And if you forgot anything that I said, just Google my name, Sheena Yap Chan, because I'm the only Sheena Yap Chan on the internet.
That's so empowering. I love that. I hope I'm the only Mariana Jimenez on the internet too, but I'm also okay to share the name and the title. Sheena, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for all your wisdom and your stories. And I'm just very excited for women and everybody to just keep listening to the message that you're spreading. So thank you. Thank you so much for tuning into that conversation, everybody. I hope you walk away feeling empowered, uplifted, confident in your own ability to start creating opportunities for yourself and create your own table instead of waiting to find a seat at somebody else's, because you deserve the seat of your own confidence, of your own trust in yourself and in your goals and your dreams and the aspirations that you're capable of creating for yourself. If you enjoyed that episode, please make sure to like. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. Or if you're listening on Apple or Spotify or whatever podcast medium, make sure to subscribe. Send this episode to a friend who might find it helpful and uplifting as well. If you are on YouTube or if you enjoy watching YouTube videos, I have recently been making my debut on there. Aside from video podcasting, I started creating videos on there just short of a month ago, and I just uploaded one of my recent videos called 3 Powerful Lessons That Heartbreak Taught Me. It's probably one of the most vulnerable videos that I've made to date, action-packed, full of insights and personal breakthroughs so that you can avoid making the same mistakes that I made in my early journey into relationships. So make sure you give it a watch and stay connected on the podcast. Again, make sure you're subscribed. Follow me on Instagram. It's at Commitment to Growth. All the updates on what's going on the platform are posted there, from the themes of the month to Q&A submissions to coaching opportunities. I am open for one-on-one coaching right now. If it's a medium that you'd like to explore, I will link to my complimentary call calendar at the bottom of the podcast description so that you can get first grabs, get a seat, come, we'll chat, get a cup of coffee, and we'll just laugh and chat about how I can support you in reaching the goals that you're trying to achieve for yourself and for your dream life. Thank you so much for being here. As always, a pride and privilege to get to share this space with you and facilitate these conversations with you and for you. Have a wonderful day, and I will see you in the next conversation.